Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie, it's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Harry T. Stone is presiding. This is On Trial, the podcast that debates the merits of movies. We prosecute, we defend. And this week is Spider-Man week all week long. And so since we've already prosecuted and defended and placed on trial and jailed and summarily executed The Amazing Spider-Man 2, we thought, well, what other piece of shit Spider-Man movie can we torture? And Spider-Man 3 immediately came to mind. So on the docket today, Sam Raimi's last outing for the Sony Spider-Man franchise, Spider-Man 3. And here to prosecute, he's Sean, you're not. How you doing, sir?
Hey, everybody. Sean Comer for the prosecution. I actually just finished playing Insomniac's Spider-Man for the PlayStation just a few nights ago, finally, and let me just say, Sony all is pretty much forgiven for this movie for the fact that it is, for the time being, PlayStation exclusive, because, my God, what a masterpiece.
Really?
This is arguably probably one of the best Spider-Man stories that'll probably never be translated to film. It is outstanding from top to bottom and kind of includes little nods to the Marvel Universe and just about every single era and adaptation of the franchise, right down to the movies.
Wow, okay.
Highly recommended.
All right, so what do we got for notes on Spider-Man 3? I know this is one where Sony couldn't keep their mitts off of Sam Raimi's project, and it became an overbloated mess. There are some merits to the movie, which I'll talk about in my defense, but how did we get to this hodgepodge?
Yeah, about that. I'm going to save the gist of the really juicy details for my case, but development on Spider-Man 3 began immediately after the humongous, at the time, nigh unprecedented success of Spider-Man 2, which, upon its release in 2004, kind of became the reigning title holder as quite possibly the greatest comic book movie sequel ever made, and superior in just about every way to the first movie. And that is damn sure reflected in the numbers as well. It grossed $890.9 million globally. It is the highest grossing. I'm sorry, I kind of phrased that badly. Those are not the numbers for Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 3, at least financially, lived up to the second movie's legacy. Spider-Man 3 grossed $890.9 million globally, making it the highest grossing of the Raimi trilogy and the third highest grossing film of 2007. Now, again, I'm going to spare you some of the details for my actual case, so I have something to talk about. But while it was a financial hit for Sony, the production process eventually drove Sam Raimi out of the franchise entirely. And by and large, his departure also meant that out of sheer loyalty, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst left right alongside him. The creative differences often were rooted in what was a bloated story, flat-out weird pacing, and the notorious excess of villains shoehorned into this. And as a result of Raimi, Maguire, and Dunst leaving, Sony dropped plans for a fourth and possibly even a fifth and sixth movie in the series, and at the time, a then already in the works Venom spinoff. Interestingly enough, one little bit of trivia that I will let out here. Storyboard artist Jeffrey Henderson would claim years later that the plans for the fourth movie centered on Bruce Campbell's French waiter from Spider-Man 3 from the fancy restaurant engagement scene, eventually becoming Quentin Beck, better known as Mysterio. But yeah, that's about all that I'm going to kind of let out of the bag for right now, because first I want you to fill everybody in on the gigantic clusterfuck that was this unintentional franchise ender.
All right. Well, our film takes place 2 years after Spider-Man 2. Things are going reasonably well for Spider-Man. He's the toast of the town. He's dating Mary Jane, who is a professional actress. Where we last left him and Harry. Harry had discovered that Peter was Spider-Man, and he had mistakenly thought that Spider-Man had actively killed his father, the Green Goblin, and so he's sort of tortured by that revelation. And where we left him in Spider-Man 2, he was out to get Spider-Man. So that's where we pick up with this movie. And an asteroid has landed on the Earth, which has a symbiote in it that is Venom. And that's where we are. We meet Eddie Brock, who's played by Topher Grace, and he's sort of, evil Peter Parker. He's a shitty tabloid journalist type, shortcuts, that sort of thing. We meet Gwen Stacy, who is Peter's lab partner, and she's dating Eddie Brock. There's an accident. There's an accident involving a crane. Spider-Man saves Gwen Stacy from nearly falling to her death, like she does. Other than Spider-Gwen. What Gwen Stacy, best known for falling to her death. Spider-Man saves her. But he's in competition with Eddie Brock for a staff job at the Daily Bugle, and so Eddie takes the opportunity to, take some pictures there of Spider-Man and try to win favor with J. Jonah Jameson. Mary Jane Watson's having difficulties in the acting world. She gives a subpar performance in her musical and ends up being fired from her show. And so their relationship is now on the rocks because Peter is portrayed in this movie as being self-involved, self-absorbed, and not able to just listen to Mary Jane and understand her feelings about herself, and only herself, all the time, in every scene. So Peter's a shitty boyfriend because he cannot handle the ego that is Mary Jane Watson. I'm just going to warn everybody. One of my defenses is if they were going to make Kirsten Dunst's character as unlikable as possible, they largely succeeded, and I should give them an A for effort in their writing. It is at this point that Harry has upgraded and updated the armor and the glider, and is the new Green Goblin. He tries to kill Peter. They have a chase through the city, and Harry gets knocked on the head and loses his short-term memory. So he forgets the entire thing ever happened, including that Peter is Spider-Man. Spider-Man is given the keys to the city for saving Gwen Stacy and everybody else involved in the crane accident, and takes an opportunity to market himself and do something celebrity forward. He ends up kissing Gwen Stacy, in a photo op, which pisses off Mary Jane. She in turn falls into the arms of Harry momentarily, who shortly thereafter has his memory restored and remembers, oh yeah, I wanted to kill Spider-Man. And so we'll get back to that in a second. Along the way, we also meet Flint Marko, who is the Sandman. You must understand, he was committing crimes to pay for the medicine for his sick daughter. That's his whole story. He falls into a particle accelerator experiment and becomes the Sandman. He'll have a fight with Spider-Man at some point in the subway, and Spider-Man will defeat him with water. Good old H2O. We'll see him later on in the film. So, Harry remembers that he wants to kill Peter. Mary Jane is on the outs with Peter, but they're trying to mend fences. When Harry tells her, "Hey, if you don't want me to kill Peter, then you need to do what I tell you," and she stupidly does exactly what he says. Not, "I'm being threatened." Not, "Hey, wait a minute, you're Spider-Man, you can defend yourself. Let me tell you what's going on." She just goes ahead and breaks the poor bastard's heart. There's a great scene that follows with him and Harry, and Harry, talks about, "Oh, I was there for her when you weren't, you sad sack. She tastes like strawberries, delicious," and they have a fight. In which case, Peter, who at this point has been infected by the symbiote, is giving into his darker impulses. They fight. In a last-ditch effort, before being knocked utterly unconscious, Harry throws a pumpkin bomb at Peter. Peter throws it back at him, and it blows up in his face, and miraculously only causes a few scars. I guess that's that super soldier serum he was taking. It gave him also Wolverine's healing factor, and saved him from an explosion in his face. So he's out there. Eddie Brock doctors up a picture of Spider-Man the way J. Jonah Jameson wanted. He wanted to put Spider-Man in a bad light, and so Brock doctored up a photo that made it look like Spider-Man had robbed a Brink security truck, the one that the Sandman was trying to rob. Peter exposes him, and he loses his job. They do the infamous scene where, after an elongated scene of Peter giving in to his more darker impulses and embarrassing himself, Mary Jane, the film industry, and Sam Raimi, he finally goes to the church tower with the bell and realizes sonic vibrations hurt the symbiote, and he finally gets it off of him, and it falls on Eddie Brock, who is at that point asked God to kill Peter Parker. So he instantly becomes Venom, because they weren't smart enough to cut this into two pictures. And he teams up with the Sandman to kidnap Mary Jane in order to draw out Spider-Man so they can kill him together. Spider-Man goes to get Harry and says, "Hey, MJ needs us both." Harry tells him to go fuck himself. He leaves. But totally not Alfred says to Harry, "Hey, he didn't kill your father. Your father killed himself. And, you need to be your own man and do the right thing." So Harry puts on the Goblin costume one more time, and he goes to help Peter, and we have ourselves a 2-on-2. This all comes down to Harry being stabbed while fighting Venom. I think the Sandman gets beaten up on for a while and then eventually just gives up. And he says, "But I was a good man." The Spider-Man figures out how to defeat Venom and subsequently does so. He tries to blow up the symbiote, but Eddie Brock doesn't want to give up the power, so he dives into an explosion, like you do. So earlier in the film, it was established that it wasn't the blonde-haired guy from the first film that actually killed Uncle Ben. It was Flint Marko, and they were together doing robberies and whatnot. And so part of the movie deals with Peter wanting revenge for the Sandman killing his Uncle Ben. Turns out it was an accident. He had the gun on him, and he was conflicted at what to do in the moment, but he got his back slapped, and the gun went off, and the poor man died. So it was all an accident. He's a good man, you see. He's trying to steal medicine for his daughters, you terrible people. Don't you understand? And then the wind blows and he goes away because Peter forgave him. Your guess is as good as mine on that one. Harry dies. Peter and Mary Jane kind of make up, and the film ends. Your witness, sir.
So let's get my problems with the movie that we got out of the way first. Number one, the shoehorning in of the symbiote saga. Bad idea. This was an attempt at a compromise on Sam Raimi's part, but it really should have boiled down to a one or the other. One side sticks to their guns, the other one gives an entirely choice. Because the symbiote saga is not a bad story. In fact, just as a self-contained movie, it could have been pretty gripping, even despite the fact that Sam was initially reluctant to use Venom at all. He didn't care for him. He grew up as more of a fan of the classic Spider-Man villains. Vulture, Mysterio, Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Sandman, what have you. So, an otherwise worthy foe is entirely wasted here. And really, so is the arc of Peter kind of unwittingly giving in to his darker impulses. Now, Toby's acting himself of his own, it isn't necessarily bad. He's working with what he was given, but in the attempt to make Peter and Spider-Man a little bit more harder-edged, he just comes off as ridiculous, and he deserves every single meme cast his way, right down to all the in-jokes thrown into the Spider-Verse. Anyway, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane, it's
the most unlikable woman since Adrian.
Yes, and it's arguably the worst performance of the three movies, and that is saying something. And I hadn't intended to bring this up, but while you were running down the plot synopsis, I thought of something that I noticed all the way through playing Insomniac's Spider-Man game. And that is that it's not a take on Mary Jane Watson seen very often, with the exception of in the Ultimate Universe. And that is, it's Mary Jane portrayed as being a capable, quick-witted, kind of cagey ally to Peter in her own right. And in fact, in the story, they split up in part because she felt that Peter wasn't really giving her enough credit for her ability to help him and to do things on her own. She's not just some struggling model or actress. In fact, she's an ambitious reporter for the Daily Bugle, who over the course of the story really breaks some huge events wide open. It's downright refreshing, especially when you compare her to Mary Jane, going from seeming to be at least somewhat understanding at the tail end of Spider-Man 2 to in this one being a needy, resentful, me, wet blanket. She is the Skylar White of this movie. And regardless of how you feel about Anna Gunn and the character, I don't mean that in a nice way. Not at all. Harry is in full Goblin Jr. mode here once he gets his memory back, and at the start of the movie. I've never been a big James Franco fan. I didn't feel he was particularly interesting at all throughout this series. He was tacked on, I think, just because he's a part of the Marvel lore, but he's not a particularly good actor, even when he's trying to be smug and sly and cunning. I still think Willem Dafoe would be flat out ashamed to call him his son. In fact, maybe that should have been just kind of played up just that much more. Because he never comes across as necessarily, I would say, particularly bright. Just that he has a decent understanding of his dad's tech. And that's really about it. I adore Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman. This was coming fresh off his Academy Award-winning turn in Sideways. And, my God, he absolutely belongs up there with Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe as one of the shining lights of the villains in the franchise. He takes what is a classically kind of hammy, sort of dull-witted character and lends him kind of a nice, tragic thread of pathos that, much like the aforementioned Green Goblin and Doc Ock, sometimes leaves you wondering, should I really be rooting against this guy? It makes him interesting. And that, I think, is a vestige of the original story that was kind of twisted into the perversion that showed up on screen. Oh, who else? Emily Blunt is frankly wasted as Gwen Stacy, who is
Bryce Howard.
I'm sorry, Bryce Dallas Howard. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Who is shoveled into the movie instead of being done justice as easily one of the most pivotal figures of Peter's entire existence. As someone who plays a key role in his evolution as Spider-Man. And she's in and out and doesn't really seem all that important. She's as much of an afterthought in this Peter's life as Mary Jane in most instances. And oh God, that brings me to saving the worst for last. Topher goddamn Grace. I'm supposed to find Venom threatening. He's supposed to be one of Spider-Man's most terrifying villains. Instead, I'm thinking that this little nonce is going to be taken out at any given moment when Red Foreman explodes around a corner, shouts "dumbass," and lariats his stupid dyed blonde head off his shoulders. This was a poor choice. Bad studio. No cookie. Stop giving this man work. He's not worth it. He's moderately on a level as Ashton Kutcher. And my God, if that doesn't tell you all that you need to know. Just, it baffled me at the start, and I quite frankly, the saving grace of this is, in my opinion, Jane Fox is no longer the worst person to ever act as a villain in a Spider-Man movie. I mean, that was the low bar that Jamie had to clear, and he just barely made it. So anyway, that being said, before I hand this case over, let's get in to instead what we almost got. First of all, Venom and Gwen Stacy were forced into the movie at the producer's request. Sam initially wanted to tell a much, much tighter story. In his original vision, Peter goes on a journey of discovering his humanity through his rogues via his battles with the Sandman, who seemingly was to have more or less the same kind of arc he had in this movie. and he learns forgiveness when it comes to him that, Flint Marko was Uncle Ben's killer. They were also going to wrap up Harry's arc without him entirely following in his dad's footsteps, but kind of halfway going along that path. And that sounds like a much, much tighter story than one that tries to meld something more personal and kind of introspective of the characters with something like the Symbiote Saga. And as a matter of fact, the original idea was, in fact, to try to split what was in these two movies into two films. But the only problem with that being was that the writers of Spider-Man 3 couldn't figure out a satisfying kind of intermediate climax that would lead into Spider-Man 4. This is a product of the fact that Raimi's general raison d'etre was he wanted to focus on his favorite classic villains. This is why we started with the Green Goblin, we moved on to Doc Ock, the third movie was going to focus on the Sandman. The plans for future movies were for Ben Kingsley to portray the Vulture before, that character was... Actually, no, correction, I stand corrected once more, kind of muddling up my own notes. Ben Kingsley was going to initially play the Vulture in one draft of Spider-Man 3 before the character was eventually written out. Instead, the producers forced in Venom because they were more hell-bent on going with the cooler modern villains that they thought the kids wanted. As a result, we also never got Anne Hathaway entering the picture as Felicia Hardy, so we never got Black Cat either. Raimi was against Venom from the beginning because he disliked his lack of humanity and didn't feel that played into the story that he wanted to tell. But as time went on, he eventually kind of grew to accept him and even almost kind of like him a little bit. And again, this would have been the midway point of a franchise that we'll never know where it would have gone in the 3 subsequent movies or the Venom movie. We never got that fabled Sinister Six movie that was reportedly in development at one point. And it's all because the studio just wanted to do too goddamn much with this one. It had the skeleton. It had the barest bare bones of a tight, focused, emotional story. Something that sounds like it would have been on par possibly with Spider-Man 2. And credit where it's due. Visually, the movie looks fantastic. Hellraiser composer Christopher Young delivers an absolutely magnificent score that falls right in line with the first 2 movies. It's all great except for the fact that they're just trying to tell too many stories and address too many things all in the span of a single 2-hour movie. It's why this thing feels so excessive. It's why it's so hard to sit through. It's why sometimes it feels like nothing matters, because as soon as something is resolved, it's just instantly on to another thread that's going to be given short shrift because, hey, we got to move on to this other story we're trying to tell too. We can't spend too much time on Peter dealing with his resentment and desire for revenge on Uncle Ben's apparent real killer, because we gotta continue telling the symbiote story. We can't necessarily spend too much time on the symbiote saga because we've got to continue to build the Harry Osborn's stagnant who the fuck even cares arc. And even then, past a certain point, we got to duck away from that because we've got to combine the two other potentially great arcs that we've been giving short shrift to this entire time, so we can build to the climax, which is also going to shovel in Harry's story and just rush everything into one big conclusion that just conveniently wraps up all three on top of one rooftop. And oh my God. I mean, the only thing I can really give it credit where it's due is just by happenstance. Since you really didn't leave that many threads dangling at the end of this movie, since we didn't get anything to tease the Vulture, it was a decent place to end the trilogy, because where do you even go from here? At least in the first movie, we kind of had the lingering question of, well, what's going to happen with Harry now that he's sworn vengeance on Spider-Man? Is that going to go somewhere? How is Spider-Man going to deal with the conflict in his new lives, and how he's kind of had to sacrifice seemingly the love of his life to pursue what he feels is this duty of great responsibility following great power? In the second movie, we get kind of another appearance by Dr. Kurt Connors, so everybody was kind of speculating from that, oh, well, maybe the third movie will be the Lizard. At the end of the movie, we see that Mary Jane is kind of looking on from the window as Peter swings out as Spider-Man to go stop a crime. In this movie, we're not really left with much of a what's next, because even at the very tail end, Peter and Mary have reconciled. They're sharing a dance. Everything is apparently going to be kind of okay. So at least the movie kind of goes out the way it lives, kind of without any necessary end in mind. So that's it for now. That's all I've got to say, and I hand the floor over to you.
Before I jump into my defense of the movie, I want to pitch an alternative Spider-Man 3. And feel free to jump in and comment on this, Sean, for this part.
All right.
But I think what they should have done, and this was the problem with Justice League 2. Justice League was meant to be two movies, and then because of a variety of reasons, they had to shorten it to one, and the movie suffered because of it, and it's a giant pile of trash that everyone hated. Unless you're like just like the easiest going of movie fans, and even most of them are like, yeah, Justice League was okay. Spider-Man 3 really should have been two movies, and the two movies I would have done would have been the first. Spider-Man 3 should have been kind of a Sinister Six meets Nightfall kind of a thing, where Spider-Man has pretty much rescued New York from the muggers and the rapist, but in lieu of that, the Kingpin has risen to power, and along with the Kingpin came all of these powered supervillains. This is where you start to see like a Hydra Man and a Sandman and a Vulture, and people who are crooks, but powered crooks rising in the place of your everyday people that Spider-Man has pretty much conquered. And and Spider-Man is finding himself Spider-Man is finding himself unable to take down these rogues in the condition that he's in, and then you bring in the alien suit, and the alien suit gives him all these extra powers and makes him more aggressive, and this all he's being dogged by tabloid reporter Eddie Brock, who's getting all of these photos and getting in Spider-Man's face and pushing the agenda that J. Jonah Jameson wants, all the while Peter's this is the first part of the symbiote arc, right? That Spider-Man just got lost, and I think you could have introduced the Black Cat and all of that as well, like they did in the comic book, especially in opposition to Mary Jane. Have him torn between the costume and the Black Cat, and his life as Peter and Mary Jane. Let that be kind of the central conflict. Anyway, so he's fighting these rogues, and it comes down to where he where he gets so aggressive he actually kills one of them, and Eddie Brock catches him doing it. At which point he realizes he's got to get rid of the suit. We do the bell tower, and there the Thing sits waiting for Eddie Brock in the next movie. After he's dealt with all of that, I think would have been a better way to do it. What do you think?
You know what? I think that would have been a fantastic means of going about it. I think that would be the way to do the symbiote saga. That's what it should have been, I think, in the fourth movie. And I would have rather had that set aside entirely and dealt with appropriately.
Right.
And
Venom needed his own movie.
Yeah. And instead, just focus this one. I mean, yeah, you know what? No, I almost said maybe don't entirely do the Sandman. Maybe do Vulture instead. But you know what? Then it's just the same problem, just with different. That's
what I'm saying.
Still have too many.
Go the Kingpin / Sinister Six route. Where you have all of these powered guys, and Peter's and the arc is Peter first is having difficulty with them, and then takes them all down eventually because he's got the power of the symbiote. But let him go too far. That's story enough. Have him also torn between the Black Cat and Mary Jane, and I think you kind of keep Mary Jane largely the same way she was in this. Wholly unlikable, but the love of Peter's life for some odd reason.
Well, okay, then here's what I would suggest. Third movie, you tell the Sandman story that you did in this one, except longer and much more focused, and to much the same end as you did in this one, except you leave Gwen Stacy out entirely.
Yes.
If you're not going to make the character as important and as critical in Peter's life as she was in the comics, which at this point I don't know how you would do that. I don't know how you could do it, since you've already killed the Goblin, and Goblin was the one who refresh my memory, Mark. My comic knowledge is a little bit hazy. Was it Peter's web or the Goblin that killed Gwen?
I believe the Goblin just drops her off a bridge.
Yeah, but the way I seem to remember it, Peter
I know in the
webbed
Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's the web that kills her.
Okay, well, yeah, I couldn't remember from the comics.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you either.
But in which case, but still, he's an instrumental part of that. If you're not going to portray that moment correctly, don't bother with it at all.
Yep.
It's too late in the game. Just don't do it. But then, so you tell that story in the third one. Fourth one is the Sinister Six. And then the fifth movie is where you bring in Venom. And then maybe if the Venom movie is a hit, you introduce Carnage as the big bad of the sixth movie.
Yeah, I think if you do it, the third one is Sandman and Black Cat, the fourth one is the Sinister Six, and the fifth one is Venom. And then I think you can get to lucky number 7 as Maximum Carnage. I think you've got six. I think you've got a slate of 6 movies there that are really, really strong. But from the third to the sixth movie, you're telling this really long, epic story. That starts with Sandman and Black Cat. You have the middle part is the Sinister Six, and then you have an entire movie dedicated to Venom. I think. And this goes into my defense, and so I kind of started here. I feel like Sam Raimi, that's kind of where he wanted to go, but because Sony interfered too much in this movie, he was forced to, as you put it, shove way too much in there. And look, there's no defense against that. The movie's a muddled mess. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it isn't. But I am going to focus on, despite the fact that the plot is muddled, the pacing is off, the performances are a bit uneven, and the characterizations are in many cases unlikable, there are some high points to this movie, and that's what we're going to focus on before we turn this over and out. So let me first start off with Sam Raimi is a great visual director. Say what you will about the characterization of the Sandman, he looks fucking great in this movie.
Oh, yeah. I hope you don't mind if I chime in with the odd exclamation now and then, because I really find this fascinating, because I'm with you in that part of the reason why I resent this movie so much is that there's so much about it that I liked.
Mm. So the sequences involving the Sandman, and I feel like if they just focused on that, would have largely would have largely saved this movie. You can't fault the actors, I think, for the performances that they gave. They didn't give Kirsten Dunst anything to be likable over, look, I've seen Kirsten Dunst in other stuff. She's a fine actress. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, she acted badly in this. They gave her nothing to work with. They made her a miserable shrew in this movie and wholly unlikable. I just watched it again this morning, and I'm like, wow, did somebody just, hate this character, whoever wrote this? They just made her the worst. And with absolutely no redeeming qualities at all. There's no redeeming point in the movie for her. Save this one scene. And I'm going to talk about James Franco's performance. See, this is where I disagree with the prosecution. I think James Franco, you have to watch. James Franco is defined by the project he takes. There are certain things he's just not good at. And there, they shouldn't have made that Wizard of Oz movie with him. 2, if they were going to make it, he shouldn't have been in it. But either way, there are just certain movies where James Franco has kind of done the John Travolta thing and just chosen a bad role for himself. On the other hand, see him in things like The Deuce. He's amazing in The Deuce. He's one of the best. He's one of the best performers in the entire show. So, I think James Franco gets a bad rap. He's not bad in this. I think he's not given a tremendous amount to work with. I think they wanted him to be bigger and broader, and he is not really capable of that. And so he tries, and it gets kind of hammy and scene chewy, but also unwatchable. However, the scenes where he gets his memory back and he's manipulating Mary Jane and Peter, and he's rubbing it in Peter's face, are his best stuff. And there he truly shines. If you watch the scenes where, and I'm going to link this back to Mary Jane, there's a scene where she goes to see him, and they cook in the kitchen, and if you're watching a Spider-Man movie, you're waiting to throw your shoe at the screen watching that scene, because you're like, what? We've suddenly left Spider-Man and we've gone into this rom-com thing between these two characters. And I get people's frustration with that, but if you take some ADHD medication and just watch the scene, watch the performance, those two lit up the screen. I don't think they get the credit for that they should, because everyone's just mad at this movie, and they're mad at that scene, and they're mad at a lot of things going on. But watch it with a critical eye. James Franco and Kirsten Dunst have all the sexual chemistry, and Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst have none of it, which is a huge problem with this entire trilogy. I'm sorry, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst are oil and water. They suck together. But James Franco and Kirsten Dunst actually have some magic going on, and it comes out in that scene, and it's an actually enjoyable performance to watch. So again, the movie in large part doesn't work, but there are high points in it that should be applauded, and that's one of them. The sequences that follow, where James Franco is first in the diner with Peter, and he tells her, oh, by the way, I'm the one that broke you guys up, or whatever he says to him. The next thing that happens is the way Peter walks out, and the waitress says, "How's your pie?" And he's like, "So good." Oh my God, he's just dripping with awesome smarminess. Again, there's a moment in that movie that he just captures so well, and he's so good. And again, if you're bombarded with all this other stuff, it's easy to forget that that's an awesome scene, and he's great in it. The confrontation at the house in their final fight before he gets half his face blown off, when he's talking about Mary Jane coming to him and being there for her, and he starts talking about how her lips taste like strawberry. I mean, you want to get up and punch him, but that's the point of that scene. At that point, he's evoking rage from the audience, and he does it really well. So, give it to James Franco. he's not all bad. I mean, the stuff where he's the Goblin sucks, but he's the wrong character for that role. Like, he's a good Harry as long as Harry doesn't have to be the Goblin. If he's just a dick to Peter, he's awesome. So performances aside, the visuals, I think were really good. The scene of Peter fighting with the Venom costume with the symbiote in the bell tower looks amazing. I mean, like I said, visually this movie, there isn't a whole lot wrong with it. I mean, there's some stuff with Venom and Topher Grace that's just unwatchable, but that's mostly because of Topher Grace. And this odd, I can't keep my I think I call it the Judge Dredd thing, where they just won't keep the damn mask on him. Every other second he's got to have his mask off. And I've defended that in the past, saying, like, if you hire Topher Grace for a role, you want Topher Grace's face on screen as much as possible, so you're going to find reasons to uncover it. But giving him like Dracula fangs and stuff, and I'm like, it's fine. But leading up to that, when he's actually fighting with the costume, I actually thought for 2007 CGI and just the angst and the desperation of Tobey Maguire in that scene, I thought visually worked really well. And so give it up to Sam Raimi in the art direction for all the Sandman stuff and all the stuff leading up to that scene, and that scene included, I think looks really, really good. It's not a bad-looking movie. The tension of having Mary Jane suspended in the air in the cabs and having the stuff fall on her and her nearly dying, that all looks really good. And so I'm not going to crap all over a movie where at least this element of it, the special effects, the fighting sequences, I mean, we talk about this all the time with things like the Transformers movies where the fight scenes are like largely unreadable. This was. I mean, the art direction in this is probably one of the best things about it, because it certainly ain't the plot. So Spider-Man 3 is not quite the dumpster fire everyone makes it out to be. There's some... I'm going to talk about Tobey Maguire here for a second, going back to performances. Again, I think people get angry about it because people don't like what they gave him to do. They don't like the story he's in. It could have been fleshed out better. I talked about him. The whole point of the Alien costume saga was him giving in to his darker impulses, and because of the rush job on this movie, that only takes up about 20 minutes out of a 2-hour picture. But had they fleshed that out and made it the bulk of the picture and really gave him some pathos and some angst, and really have some gravity and consequences to the actions he takes in that suit, other than the stupid fucking dance scene. Ugh. Like, how in a pitch meeting are you like we could have Peter kill somebody? We could have Peter. Like, how about if he's a dick in a club? How about that? And then they threw that guy out in the hallway, and then Tom Rothman from Sony saw him and was like, "Hey, what are you doing out in the hallway?" "Well, I pitched this idea." "Brilliant! Go back in there and pitch it again." Ugh. It's just like. I want to be in a room sometimes when they decide what they're going to keep in a script and what they're going to cut for budgetary reasons, because that's the only explanation I can have, because they can't be this incompetent at their jobs. In any case, besides all that, what Tobey Maguire is kind of given to do in this movie, like, he's a fine actor too. A lot of people don't love his Spider-Man because he's too emo, he's too angsty. He's too sappy. He's too much of a drip. He's too in love with Mary Jane. They want him, to be kind of a sexier, angrier, more kick-ass, more Spider-Man. But that's not the one they chose to do here. They chose to do lovelorn, lovesick Spider-Man. So, and he does it well. I believe he's obsessed with this horrible woman. That's one thing. I do believe he loves this woman for I don't know what reason, but I believe it. So the stuff with and it often gets neglected because nobody cares about the character. But his stuff with Aunt May is actually really good. They have some, look, people want to see Spider-Man kick ass and shoot webs, but when he's actually just sitting on a bed talking to his Aunt May, going, "I don't know what to do next. I'm lost," it actually works pretty well. So that's it. That's largely my defense of Spider-Man 3. It's a movie of moments. it's taken individually in those moments, it's actually not a bad watch. When taken as a whole, I can see why people want to bury it under a rock in a basement behind a door that says "Beware of the leopard."
Hang on one second. I need to put some Orajel in. And there we go. That's better. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have what I think is an on-trial first. Because I am going to more or less unilaterally declare this a draw. Because with the exception of a couple of extremely minor quibbles, I really don't have much to add, and I find myself, especially based on that proposed restructure of where franchise should have gone, agreeing with what the defense has had to say, and it sounds like the defense has largely kind of, admitted that a lot of what I pointed out was a fair cop. I agree. Visually, this movie is positively stunning. It is a testament to just what a great job Sony did across these three movies of bringing the aesthetics of a Spider-Man that Sam Raimi grew up with to life. Everything from the character design. Yes, I will admit Venom looks amazing, which is all the more reason I'm so fucking pissed that he was wasted in this movie. Sandman looks incredible. Even Gwen Stacy, even Bryce Dallas Howard looks like a spot-on Gwen Stacy. There's a good reason why everybody loves J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Just it nails all the visuals, just point by point by point. I have a hard time faulting the actors for much of anything. The only one where we may have to agree to disagree is on James Franco, because I can think of exactly 3 times where I've really enjoyed him. Number 1 was Milk, but that was Oscar bait. And prior to that, he played a hapless idiot in Pineapple Express and Freaks and Geeks. Which was his breakout.
Have you watched The Deuce?
No, I have not.
You got to watch The Deuce.
I'll maybe give it a try. I also just am not a big fan of James Franco as a personality, based on everything that I've seen, but that's just me. Yeah, he's a good, sly, conniving personal nemesis to Peter Parker, but as the successor to the Goblin Glider, honey, no. just no. God, no. You were a fucking terrible goblin.
Yeah,
from top to bottom.
They really should have. I think he would have worked out better, going back to the plot that I pitched. I think he goes to the Kingpin and says, I need Spider-Man eliminated.
Yes, I would have liked that. I would have been fine with that. I will never have much of a bad thing to say about Tobey Maguire as a Spider-Man across these 3 movies. I think it is criminally unfair to Tom Holland in particular, and to a slightly lesser extent Andrew Garfield, that no matter how much effort they put in to their characters, everybody is still insistent on bitching, get Tobey Maguire back for Spider. Tobey Maguire is in his 40s?
If they're going to do like a Spider-Verse thing, if they're going to do like a live action Into the Spider-Verse type of thing, where it's different Spider-Mans from different dimensions and stuff like that, and they want to bring him in, sure. I'd like to see him as sweatpants wearing Spider-Man.
But you now hear all these people, even talking about we can't get Tobey Maguire back. Because the man's in his 40s and he's moved on.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake.
Look, and with the condition of fandoms as they are right now, do you really think Tobey Maguire wants to be bothered with this shit show?
Oh, God, no. Fuck! Nor do I think Kirsten Dunst would want anything to do with it.
Oh no. Kirsten Dunst has drinks with Natalie Portman going, remember those Marvel movies? And she says, ugh, I don't want to.
Yeah. That's probably about when they will know to. Don't. It worked. We finally found the appropriate volume of tequila. Because, God, the fandom does not deserve the work that so many of these actors put into their performances. They really seriously, even the good ones.
I didn't mention this before, but I mean, it doesn't change my argument at all. I actually like Topher Grace as a shitty tabloid reporter. You know, he just needed to not be Venom. He was fine as Eddie Brock.
Exactly. I will clarify that. You want him because, with Venom, you have to have somewhere to go. You have to have something to make the transformation dramatic. So you want to make him a conniving, mealy-mouthed, backstabbing, no-talent hack of a reporter who has to commit libel to hold on to his job? Fine.
Yeah,
no problem with that.
Yeah, I absolutely think Topher Grace works in that role.
But where it all fell apart for me was when Venom opened his fang-snarling, slobbery mouth and that voice came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That, as small as that will sound to some people, that was the moment that ruined it.
Well, not only that, they got the character wrong. When Eddie Brock became Venom, he became something else entirely. He just wasn't. He wasn't like Eddie Brock with a magic costume.
No,
he became
Venom was a monster.
Right, Venom, and that's what I mean. Look, and everyone can mark their bingo, their Radulich and Broadcasting bingo cards here. That was the thing with Venom. It was one of the few things they did right in that movie. They got the fact that Venom, the amalgamation of the host and the symbiote becomes the monster Venom, and Venom is its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't do that in Spider-Man 3. They basically just, they told Topher Grace to eat the scenery, and so the scenery he ate, and it comes off terrible.
Venom should be an animalistic murderer,
right? With the voice they had in the Venom movie, I thought was perfect for it.
Yeah. You combine Topher Grace's Eddie Brock with the voice from the Venom solo movie, and
now you got something.
Yeah, and give him an actual full-length movie to go on a complete reign of terror. Something that's going to make it that much more unbelievably epic when those two have to team up to take down Carnage in the franchise finale. And that's it. Congratulations, you've nailed it. But everything else you've said, Mark, to be perfectly honest, I agree with it. Both the good and the bad. The problem was not, for the most part, with the performances. My general dislike for James Franco aside, the problem was with what they were given, and it wasn't enough that I think anybody could have made up for the shortcomings.
It's another classic example of, sometimes the studio needs to just back off and let a really creative person like Sam Raimi have some breathing room.
Thank you. This was what I was going to close my case out with. And it's a reminder of the key difference between, in particular, the MCU and the DCEU. And when I say the DCEU, I'm talking about everything up to Justice League, except maybe Wonder Woman. Marvel, for the most part, they let the people that they brought on board to bring these characters to life just do their thing. Just hands off. You've demonstrated you clearly get them. You understand the source material. We're just going to let you have at it. Disney does a fantastic job of that when it comes to Marvel. DC, historically, almost every movie they make has been marred up until fairly recently by Warner Brothers' constant meddling.
Yeah.
Constantly wanting to see everything done a certain way.
Now they've course corrected since then, though. Warner Brothers now is pretty much like James Wan's Aquaman going forward.
They have since Jeff Johns took over.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Johns took over, and all of a sudden, it's like they acknowledged, hey, the Marvel way works for a reason. They took the characters and their worlds, and while they interconnected them, they made the stories distinctive. They have their own tone. They have their own feel to them. They're not trying to treat every fucking character like Batman. Which is historically what DC has done when they are at their worst.
Not everyone's from Gotham. They don't all have to be solemn. Sorry.
And that's as much on DC's editorial board sometimes as it is on the people who make the movies. It's like someone saw the Nolan Batman movies, and the one thing they didn't understand is those are motifs, and that's an approach that logically works for one character and one character only. Batman. You can't shoehorn it. You can't shoehorn Superman into that. You can't force that on the Flash.
Right.
It just doesn't work. But that's something that they got when Jeff Johns came on board. They let everything kind of be their own. And to kind of bring that back around to Spider-Man, that's something for the longest time Sony really got about Sam Raimi. Sam is an unabashed, dyed-in-the-wool, cradle-to-grave Spider-Man fanboy. This is a guy who said that he grew up with Spider-Man painted on his bedroom walls. He loves this character. It's on a level with the way Ryan Reynolds loves Deadpool. And so they let him really bring the worlds of the comics that he grew up with to life in a modern setting. And for 2 movies, fuck me sideways, it worked. It worked. At this point, the four of the best comic book movies ever made after the 1989 Batman were the first 2 Spider-Man movies and the first 2 X-Men movies.
All right, we got to wrap up. But I think I think the message that you should get from this podcast about this one is go back and watch it. Leave some of your it's a mixed bag. But watch it. Watch it for its performances and less for, it's your sort of fandom. I want Spider-Man to be XYZ kind of a thing, and I think you'll have a much better experience with it. It's my take. The next time we're doing it on trial will be August 1st. Now we had been promoting doing Pulp Fiction, but Pulp Fiction. How do you prosecute that movie? It's largely perfect. So it's a fucking Oscar contender. I mean, I just didn't want to put it. I didn't want to do the nitpick thing. So we kind of went back into the Quentin Tarantino treasure trove of movies. I was like, let's find one that really pissed people off and was very divisive. And that was the follow-up to Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, one of my personal favorites, because black
and for the life of me, you fuckers who don't like this movie, I just don't get you.
So I'm gonna kill one of my babies here. I'm gonna prosecute it. Sean's gonna defend it. In August we're gonna do, so that's August 1st. But we're also gonna do a TV party for Orange Is the New Black, Glow Season 3, and then we'll do an on trial on August 22nd for the 1982 Swamp Thing on the week that we're reviewing the Swamp Thing TV series that has already been canceled on DC Universe. In the meantime, in between time, you can check out our review of Spider-Man Far From Home, Amoth Berserker, otherwise known as Butt Swab Wednesday. Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 4 Legacy. Next week, we've got a pair of Doom Patrols for you. We got the Doom Patrol comic featuring Andrew Sheehan explaining everything there is to know about the Doom Patrol, because I knew nothing. And that show would have been 5 minutes of me going, Jesse, I don't know what I just read. And then we'll have a TV party for the Doom Patrol series on DC Universe on July 18th. We'll have a review of Crawl, which is set in Florida but filmed in Serbia. Go figure that one out. And we'll have a review of the Texas Hippie Coalition. The following week, we've got a pair of Cloak and Daggers. We've got Cloak and Dagger the comic on July 22nd. We've got a review of Lion King the 23rd, Sabaton the Great War, and then Cloak and Dagger Season 2 brought to you by the good people at Freeform. And then finally, we close out July with DC Hanna-Barbera 3, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, L7, Scatter the Rats, and the aforementioned Jackie Brown. We've got sports, and wrestling for you. We'll have reviews for Fight for the Fallen versus Evolve. We're going to combine that into one show. We'll have a review for Extreme Rules, and we'll have some alternate commentary for you for the Plant versus Lee fight, July 20th on Fox. You're watching Fox. Comic-Con is the 18th through the 20th, so hopefully we'll get some Marvel news during that period, and we may do a recording about it, we may not. I may just post a shit ton of articles to the Radulich and Broadcasting Facebook page. And if you like this show, if you happen to have heard it somewhere and you're like, where can we get more of this nonsense, go subscribe to the Radulich and Broadcasting Facebook page. Subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use. But whatever platform you're using, use Podcoin. Why waste your time listening to podcasts when you could get paid to listen to podcasts? That's what I'm saying, right? You could have spent the last hour listening to us babble about this halfway decent movie, and you could have gotten a Starbucks gift card for it. Why wouldn't you?
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
I may have to give this a try.
Yeah, Podcoin. We're on there. All your favorite podcasts are on there. If you're one of the people that listens to all 97 of Conrad Thompson's podcasts, they're all on there. Freakonomics, they're on there. You know,
Freakonomics.
Whatever podcast you like, except for a handful of, except for a few, they're all on Podcoin. You sign up today. You subscribe to a podcast. You listen to at least 10 minutes of it. They're going to give you internet currency, and then if you save up enough of it, you can trade it in for gift cards. America.
Hang on,
a great country.
I need to see if a certain podcast that I've rediscovered recently is available on here.
It should.
Where's the search feature?
On Podcoin?
Yeah.
There's a little magnifying glass.
Oh, I'm on the website and it's just telling me to download the app.
Download the app.
Okay, I will do that in the car later.
See, be like Sean. Why waste your time listening to podcasts when you can get paid to listen to podcasts?
Yes,
because fucking coin.
I would love to get paid to listen to My Favorite Murder.
That's right. All right, Sean. That's all my plugs. Do your thing, and then let's get out of here.
You know what? It feels so good to actually be kind of a semi-steady content creator again. First off, for updates on what I'm going to be doing next, I strongly suggest following me on Twitter at Comer Codex. And as far as where else you can catch me, if you like what you've heard here, I have a weekly Twitch stream. Actually, it's up to the point where it's now a nearly daily Twitch stream. I typically stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 7 p.m. Central Time up until 10 p.m. I'm a variety streamer. I focus on kind of a combination of a couple of select competitive multiplayer games, particularly Overwatch and Dead by Daylight, and also some story-based games woven in there. Unfortunately, I am off for the next couple of days because myself and my family are going on a merry little pilgrimage to Tokyo and Tulsa. It's a working vacation for us, going to an anime and manga convention in the great state of Oklahoma. I'm going to be there from, later tonight until Monday.
You want to plug the company
But
that you're selling? You want to plug the company you're selling for?
Not particularly, but I will. You can find me at the table for Honeysuckle Rose Creations. So if you want to stop and say hi and pick up some upcycled jewelry, by all means, be my guest. After that, when I get home Tuesday evening, I'm going to be right back on my grind, but I'm going to be a little bit until I get back to Overwatch, because I want to take a break, a little palate cleanser, and in honor of the comic unexpectedly ending recently, I am going to marathon Telltale's The Walking Dead, starting from Season 1 up through at least The Walking Dead Michonne, and possibly going right up into the final season, if I feel like it. After that, it's going to be probably right back to Overwatch on Thursday and Friday. Since we're talking about Spider-Man, this is kind of like my when you fix the damn door thing. I will begin learning to play Killer in Dead by Daylight when the DVD devs fix the bug that is screwing over survivors, because I'm not going to ruin someone's day on Twitch. Speaking of, if you want to catch my stream or any of my VODs, anything like that, twitch.tv/ComerCodex. If you are looking at it on a browser and you scroll down just a little ways, you will actually find a convenient countdown timer letting you know exactly when I am going to be streaming next.
All right.
So,
very good, Sean. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm looking forward to us tearing into Jackie Brown. Or me tearing into Jackie Brown, and you telling people, hey, it's really funny when De Niro says, hey, you want to fuck to Jodie Foster.
wait, that wasn't Jodie Foster.
I thought it was Jodie Foster. Who is that?
No, that was hang on, because I'm barely blanking on her name, and if I don't look this up, it's going to dig at me all day long. I believe that was Rosanna Arquette.
You're right. Oh, Dad, Jodie Foster, Rosanna Arquette, same person. All right, folks, this has been on trial.
Or wait, it was either Bridget Fonda or Rosanna.
Bridget Fonda.
Yes, it was.
Which makes more better sense that I would think she was than Jodie Foster. All right,
yes,
now that we got that all blonde white women look-alike cleared up, court is now. All rise. Court is in recess. Be well, be safe, and behave.
Hey, Dad.
What's up, honey?
So, summer's awesome. I love it and all, but it gets boring sometimes.
Oh, I know. How about we sign you up for the Jungle Island Summer Adventure Camp starting June 10th?
For real? My friends went last year and they said they had so much fun. The foam dart battleground, the animals, all the activities. They said this year there's also a new escape room and twin orangutans.
And don't forget the 300 vibrant birds that made Jungle Island famous. I'm going online and signing you up for the Jungle Island Summer Adventure Camp starting June 10th.
Visit jungleisland.com to plan your summer adventure. Hurry, space is limited. Starts June 10th.
The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Old moon, yeah. That's Hugo, tickling the ivories. He just saved by bundling home and auto with Progressive. Gonna finally buy a ring for that gal of yours, Hugo? Send her my condolences. Hi-oh! This next one's for you two. There's a burglar in my heart. Thank you.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.